And to cap the climax, for the benefit of those who have trouble recognizing a trout when they see one, someone was good enough to append to the text another resurrection account. Perhaps this writer was a literalist who assumed that since both Matthew and Luke were inspired and therefore reliable witnesses, he'd better come up with a Galilee appearance so as not to appear retrograde in either knowledge or faith. The idea of a reunion fish fry in John 21 is cute enough, but when we try to make sense of Peter's leaping out of the boat and then back into it in order to pull single-handed an overburdened net to shore, we know we are dealing not with history remembered, but with the polemic historicized. Of course, those who are familiar with the grammar and syntax of legend are neither surprised nor offended by these carrying-ons. That's the accretion process by which legends grow and develop. If troubled by inconsistencies and mutual contradictions of the elements in the gospel accounts, one need only look at the various images of Moses in the Jewish tradition, where he is a warrior, a prophet, a lawgiver, a writer of the whole book. The fifth book of Moses, Deuteronomy, is supposed to have been written by Moses, or, of course, a child with towering capacities, as Jesus was, the 12-year-old Jesus in the temple. By the time Jesus was adopted by people of a number of different spiritual proclivities, it is only to be expected that his portraits would come to vary considerably and in turn the stories by which they were proclaimed. When you find a fish in the milk, you are supposed to be bright enough to figure out that it didn't come through the cow's udder, somebody put it there. So much for my argument, and now let me turn to what Dr. Craig said. I agree with Dr. Craig that it is probable that there was a Jew named Joseph of Arimathea who buried Jesus. People who question that would say Christians have invented it, but I think invention is not so likely. Let's assume that that's an historical fact. However, I have two difficulties with 2 points that Dr. Craig makes. He assumes, for his argument, that Joseph was a member of the council that determined that Jesus has committed a crime and that he's worthy of death. Here I would say, or answer the question, who was responsible for Jesus' death? Certainly Pilate, the Romans. The punishment of crucifixion clearly shows that the Romans put Jesus to death, not the Jews. And I would question in general the fact that there has been a judgment against Jesus from the Jews. It's highly unlikely that during the night that the council assembled during the night and declared that he's worthy of the death, apart from the fact that Luke has this council meet during the daytime and Mark during the night. So already the gospel writers cannot agree on the time when that happened. So I would question the fact or the assumption that the Jewish council condemned Jesus to death. There was one council, the Roman council, that determined that he has committed a crime worthy of death, but there was no such dealing of the Jewish council against Jesus. We don't have the evidence for that. It's in Mark, of course, but the Markan account has a parallel. The Jewish the narrative of how the Jewish council determines Jesus' guilt has a parallel structure in the way Pilate is determining that he is worthy of death. And here already we see the influence of legend and tendencies. You know that in Mark and in the other gospel accounts, Pilate is the one who wants to release Jesus. He's convinced of his innocence. If you look at the secular sources about Pilate, you will see he's a villain. And so clearly the image of Pilate is a Christian one. It has nothing to do with historical value. Here we see already it's nothing but Christian propaganda, historical propaganda that we meet. That doesn't allow me to accept any of the way that Dr. Craig deals with the Christian gospel accounts as reliable sources. Second, Jesus' tomb was found empty by women. We know that again from Mark, not from Paul. When Paul talks about the burial of Jesus, he doesn't say anything about the burial of Jesus. First of all, he doesn't mention Joseph of Arimathea, but I said, well, we can accept it. But he doesn't mention that women have discovered the tomb. In fact, he's only talking about Jesus being buried. Let me hasten to add, even if the women found an empty tomb, it may not have been the tomb of Jesus. How could they have known where he was buried? Romans put Jesus to death, and women were not allowed to be close to Jesus. The gospel writers, Mark, the oldest gospel, said they saw it from afar. But that may be Christian propaganda. I mean, it was getting dark. How could they have known where he was buried? So that I would question that already. And the tendencies of the accounts is to bring the women closer to the tomb. In John, for example, you will have Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the disciple whom Jesus loved under the cross. So I would like to discuss that in more detail. I would say, if they found an empty tomb, how do we know that that was Jesus' tomb? There's another possibility, that Joseph of Arimathea, who took care of Jesus' corpse, took him out of there and placed him in another tomb. He may have done it because it was the law to bury somebody before the Sabbath. But how could we exclude the possibility that he took him out afterwards and that the woman may have seen a wrong tomb? So I would say the empty tomb found by women doesn't say anything about the resurrection of Jesus. Nothing. Very many possibilities have to be discussed. As far as the flight is concerned, I would say, Dr. Craig, come on, I'm saying they fled, and you are telling me that there was still the denial after that. But the denial happened 30 minutes after that. We're still on the same day. When I'm talking about the flight, I'm talking about an action that took place gradually. Nothing is more likely that the disciples, after their master has been killed, would be going back to the place where they are coming from, where they had left families. They were married. We agree on the visions. The question is now, what's the origin of the visions? And let me just briefly make a comment on the explanation. God raised Jesus from the dead. I'm unwilling to introduce any metaphysical things into an historical argument. The God, when I'm talking about God, the recent happenings, what happened the last months, doesn't allow me to accept God. The theodicy issue becomes a problem. If God doesn't intervene, where was he during the Holocaust? Why does he play favorites, intervening on behalf of some but not on others? Where was he on September 11th? And of course, his ethnic cleansing reported in the Old Testament against the Canaanites makes the great intervener appear a very fickle fellow indeed. So let's keep God out of this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lüdemann.